Hello, this is a response video to Why Power Scaling Matters by Godzilla King of Monsters, or better abbreviated as GKOTM. GKOTM I have been following for years, actually, across multiple different websites, and he has been banned from countless forums, countless communities for being aggressive, very defensive over what he believes in, which is, Heisei Godzilla is the most powerful Godzilla. And so Godzilla King of Monsters has been around for so long that, he's kind of ingrained in a lot of power scaling culture. He's kind of one of the big guys who has managed to use math in a probably correct way, as far as I know, um, to power scale characters. But Godzilla King of Monsters is also a very, very belligerent person. His personal opinions and his notwithstanding are very angry personal opinions about people. Godzilla King of Monsters is a very inflammatory person, and he attacks the individual and then calls their argument dumb and then calls them brain dead apes. You will see this in this video, specifically of him doing the exact same thing. On the off chance that Godzilla King of Monsters does see this and respond, and I am criticizing your video content, not you. However, because your video content is, a part of what you are saying here, I will have to criticize some of your viewpoints to get across on how this video it works. So before this part ends, I would just like to say that you will see a lot of very angry shit flinging of from this user Godzilla King of Monsters in this video. His his responses and all that are very, very angry, and he'll call people stupid or whatever, and then call them all brain dead apes. And so personally, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. He has some anger issues. He has admitted to this, obviously, but he has very much uncontrollable anger problems that just, you know, impede him from talking correctly here. So while I am saying here that he is not dumb or stupid in any way, what I do think is that uh, if he does ever want to make a response to this video, then he is going to have to actually not treat this like, a thing where he can shit fling at somebody, but, talk to somebody. That's all I need to say. But the most of the content of this video will be criticized to an exceeding degree that, probably he won't like. So I hope you enjoy this video. So, like and subscribe, all that stuff. Hope you have a good day and enjoy the video. Normally, I don't go after thumbnails whatsoever in these YouTube videos, but I think this deserves a mention. Um, so this thumbnail is insanely cluttered. Obviously, the buffering is from me because I was trying to take a screenshot, but the first thing you should note is that there's a lot of text. You see, there's the we know so much about power scaling, yet all we do is misinform people about it. The grammar is wrong on every single little bit here. So you have like, we know so much about Godzilla, even, and then, it cuts to yet all we do is misinform, which misinform is spelled wrong. And then he has a bunch of exclamations and ones about it to indicate people are dumb or something. I don't know. Then you have on his side with the gigantic text or whatever, has these dudes, the D's is wrong, the dudes is capitalized for some reason, are goddamn dumbasses, and the D is capitalized, and I, which is not capitalized, and have, which is capitalized, no doubt about it. It's not very looking off to a good start here, you can tell. But then when you read Why Power Scaling Matters in that really bad Godzilla 2014 font, you could go to the side little, and it says in a little font, cope about it. I don't know if that's like how you use the word. Obviously, we know it's not how you use the word whatsoever. Cope about it is a crazy choice of words here. Could have said cry about it, but cope about it that's not how that works. That sounds wrong. So the reveal of this is really funny because look, he's pointing at the YouTubers he doesn't like. This video reveals his hand here. What he doesn't like And it's not actually about why power scaling matters. It's actually pretty much about how Goji Center, Dangerville, and Godzilla Guy are tarnishing the beautiful walls of power scaling. They're tarnishing the sacred arts of scaling the monsters and giving them feats or whatever. Ever. That's literally what it is. And he's mad about that. He's not actually really mad about why power scaling doesn't matter to these people, but he's mad that they're ruining it for him and other people who do power scaling. And that's the point of this thumbnail. So in this video, don't be surprised when he starts complaining about these three guys, because those are the three personal gripes that he talks about.
So I think this has been due for quite some time. Now what I'm talking about is a video explaining why I do what I do and why other people do what I do. And that is the concept of power scaling. I bring it up because quite a few people try to screech like chimpanzees.
Sorry for pausing in between the words of Godzilla King of Monsters here, but I just needed to point this out, that what he does is do this weird dehumanizing tactic where anyone that disagrees with him or has a different opinion from him in some sort of manner are chimpanzees. So you'll see this a lot in this video, and I will point it out every single time, but we'll be here for a while. So, yeah.
Whenever you bring up the topic, even though it's quite a lot more worthwhile than a lot of other discussions in fandoms, such as shit like shippings and other cringe. But
Godzilla King of Monsters elevates his hobby that's rooted in fandom culture to downplay or put down another hobby in fandom culture. I think this is very self-explanatory, but this sounds like a 2015 kid here complaining about fictional characters kissing or something. So, you know, strange choice to start off with here.
I'm getting ahead of myself. So what is power scaling? Power scaling is essentially discussions on how powerful or capable of combat characters are in versions of media, be it film, book, whatever. Now, by that definition, power scaling falls under narrative analysis, and narrative analysis is often viewed quite highly. You'll even see it reaching millions of views on channels like Baller and Critical Drinker.
So immediately off the bat, you could tell that this isn't really going well. He is attempting to elevate his hobby to another level where it can be acknowledged as an academic thing, or like a literal movie and book type thing, right? Or in critic type way. In reality, Godzilla King of Monsters immediately shows his hand by proving that he doesn't know what literary analysis is. What he thinks literary analysis is, from what you can probably tell in the video, is that literary analysis involves looking at a character, seeing their movements or something, and saying, yup, that's analysis. In reality, this is not analysis. Depicting a character doing physical prowess or trying to analyze how strong they could do in a fight is not literary analysis. He said it perfectly here, where he was talking about his whole power scaling being, about physical stuff. So ultimately, it has nothing to do with literary analysis. What it does have to do, though, is that it's just a hobby. But what literary analysis is that it's a critique type way, right? You will find deconstructionist, feminist, and other forms of critiques under literary analysis. You will find analyzing the text or deciphering the meaning of the text. You will find the author and why they chose this, and other forms of this. I'm even doing it basically. But Godzilla King of Monsters here is not doing that. He is just saying, oh, well, it's literary analysis, guys. You have to believe me. But it's not cited. He's just saying that it's literary analysis. I have read a lot of, literary analysis in my lifetime, and I have not seen one that has incorporated power scaling. And it's astonishing to me how he just says this, and then his audience will probably agree and eat it up because they want to feel important too. They want to feel that their hobby is better than the other fandom hobbies. This is literally what he's doing, where he's going, oh, well, my hobby has more importance than your hobby. In reality, he can just admit that it's a hobby and that he likes it better than other hobbies. But he doesn't want to do that, because if he did do that, then it would just break the whole illusion that he is, in fact, not a literary critic or any of that stuff, but he's just some guy with a hobby. YouTubers, Really? Could you, like, cite a book or cite a director or an interview or whatever? Like, could you do that? We would love if you could do that. But I mean, you don't have to. I mean, you could just say that it is and, say that literary analysis is popular on YouTube and then just show YouTubers. Yeah, you could do that. But or, you could actually cite someone who's actually a real literary critic who has cited power scaling, but you don't have to. You really don't have to.
and stuff like that. People are willing to watch 6-hour dissertations on why Doctor Strange 2 is a bad movie. So a 20-minute video on how strong, say, Godzilla is shouldn't really be a surprise. Now, why does power scaling have a bad reputation? A couple of reasons. For one, because it incites arguments. And a lot of people try to be babies about arguments. Oh, it's toxic. Oh, it goes on too long. Blah blah blah. The same people, though, will stand whatever they think is the best movie, or their favorite movie, or, try to insert political opinions, religious allegories, or whatever other nonsense into media analysis. But
So Godzilla King of Monsters shows his true hand, right? Where he's going, well, actually, readings of movies are bad, and people who are super fans of work and will defend it to the death or whatever are more toxic than the power scaling community. So yeah, none of this actually addresses the argument that power scaling inherently can get toxic, right? None of it really addresses that. Instead, he's just saying, well, actually, there's other people who are toxic and they're putting in readings, they're putting in ideas into works that other people haven't thought of when they watch the work. What the hell? And so, it's really just him sidestepping it. You will see this a lot in the video, but this is like the beginning of it.
I often see it in large communities where
So, Godzilla King of Monsters decides to call a bunch of people sheep. It's not really clear like who he's specifically calling a sheep, but the large communities. But it's so he could be like, oh well, my community is actually intelligent. You're not followers like you are. We're alphas. We're lone wolves. We don't follow the stupid idiot masses around. This is like little kid stuff. It's really cringy and embarrassing. I don't recommend putting this on your video if you're ever gonna make a video like this. But it's Godzilla King of Monsters. He'll do it if he needs to get his point across. But evidently, so far, his point is that power scaling isn't toxic. Other people are toxic. And people who disagree with me, they're sheeps and chimpanzees.
example, when Dragon Ball Super was running on air, you would often see people complain about the bad power scaling in Super, but then you would have the defense of power scaling doesn't matter. For one, Dragon Ball's always been a
This image has nothing to do with Dragon Ball and consistency of power scaling in the sense of Dragon Ball. This has everything to do, though, with power scaling and the consistency of Marvel. Please put your images specifically where they need to go, because if you have stuff like this, you're going to be confusing and misleading your audience. Comics Explained is saying that, this doesn't line up, doesn't mean that it's a part of this argument now.
power scaling show because the main character's whole goal is to become as strong as he possibly can. So let's not hear anything about that. Two, good power scaling means that the story is functioning well. Things are consistent and logical. So when you have nonsense like Krillin beam clashing Super Saiyan Blue, that gets noticed. So
Godzilla King of the Monsters conflates literary analysis with narrative techniques and then proceeds to place power scaling in both of these camps and say power scaling matters because it keeps characters consistent. However, power scaling has nothing to do with keeping characters consistent in a story. Power scaling is about, gauging whether a character could fight this character from another universe and then they pit them together, right? It's there's no point in trying to pit this fictional character against another in their own verse when we know the answer in power scaling terms, right? So, what is the point of this, right? Godzilla King of Monsters is just like conflating these two ideas together, saying that power scaling is a literary analysis. So that means, according to him, that if you gauge a character's strength, then you'll understand the story or something. And then also, it's also a narrative technique. You can't just like place this idea into both camps and then expect things to go well. Words mean things, and apparently, as far as we're going right now, none of these things make sense. So unfortunately, Godzilla King of Monsters, you're gonna have to be very specific here. Which one is it? Is it a literary technique, or is it literary analysis? Which the real answer is, you don't have to answer this, but it's neither. It's a hobby for fun, which obviously, gauging two different characters in a fight together, right? From different universes, by the way. And so Godzilla King of Monsters then cites like Krillin getting fighting Goku or whatever, and then he goes, it's stupid or whatever. And then he even edits in the thing that Goku is holding back. So ultimately, this whole weird tangent he had as ongoing is, partially invalidated, because Dragon Ball is a very, consistent story with how, strong these characters are. And also, that image has nothing to do with power scaling. The whole narrative analysis chart, that has nothing to do with power scaling in any manner, right? The reality is that a character could be consistent in strength, in writing, and whatnot, and they don't need power scaling. So, what are we really going for here? Who knows?
As mentioned, power scaling then falls under a form of media analysis, just that regarding the strength of the characters. Going off that, that should mean it's more important to discussions of fiction than other things like ships, reviews, theories, and other crap like that. And yet, nobody really shits on those, like how they shit on power scaling. Why is that?
I think you know what I'm going to say. And if you do, then, congrats. But to anyone else who doesn't really, he's still trying to elevate his hobby over other fandom hobbies and other forms of media engagement.
Well, likely because they confuse scaling with debating, which are two different things. Debating is that quote unquote toxic arguing that people seem to not like. But even then, debating has its uses. From personal experience, debating helped me when it came to public speaking classes in college and helped me analyze ways to speak better. If you try to convince, try to persuade, or try to prove something, then debating is a tool that you can use. Now, as it applies to fiction, technically, you're not really winning anything unless you're just trying to get out your scaling in earnest, which I think is very important because whether or not you like it, being honest in media discussion is very important if you're going to do it. So if you're going to talk about which Godzilla is the strongest, which Mecha Godzilla is the strongest, which Ghidorah is the deadliest, whatever the fuck, you should account for accuracy, you should account for scaling.
You see, none of that actually really matters at all. Like, I mean it. Like this whole previous section kind of doesn't matter, because this part of the video is when it gets very angry, very inflammatory, and very not to the point. Godzilla King of Monsters instead you turns this video from why power scaling matters video into why I really hate three YouTubers for ruining my beautiful power scaling and disrupting the sanctity of calculations or something.
This was partly inspired by a fucking loser who tried to make a video saying Godzilla scaling is bad, but considering that fucking monkey was unable to spell the word prove, I'm not
Godzilla King of Monsters, I don't think you should be criticizing anybody on grammar when your thumbnail has like tons of grammatical errors and a lot of issues that could be fixed before posting it. But go ahead, complain about Godzilla guy writing prove wrong.
giving that ape any more attention. So instead, I'm targeting
This was embarrassing to watch. This is really embarrassing. This is like a grown man going, "Ha, you're not worth my time, kid. You're nothing to me, you stupid ape, you stupid monkey. Why don't you go get a real job? I'm moving on to real fish, bigger fish to fry." And it comes off as incredibly desperate, right? For something, for a demand for Godzilla's guy, sorry, I was about to say Goji Center, Godzilla guy to respond, right? And it's really sad. This is embarrassing. Like, if you don't want to give Godzilla guy the time of day, then don't show him in the video. But he kind of had to, because he needed as a jumping off point so he could go Sephiroth mode. I don't take this seriously. Like this is so so embarrassing. Jeez.
Bigger problems. Dangerville and Goju Center are some of the largest Godzilla channels on YouTube, and they often discuss things like the strength of monsters and who would win in fight, but they do it in the most ape way. They try to say, oh, this one's bigger. Oh, this one's corporeal build. And all that other dumb shit. Like, for example, Dangerville, the strongest Godzilla video. They accounted for size as a factor of strength, which is stupid because Godzilla swings well above his height and weight class anyway. So including size is just moronic. So then we have them also states things like Shin gets a 3 out of 10 in intelligence, but also straight up admit that it is a mindless beast. So they're literally just playing favorites. They're giving Shin points just because they like him.
Godzilla King of Monsters refuses to cite anything here. So he doesn't cite like the corporal build, or at least try to explain it and explain why power scaling is superior, or why this number system is dumb and why power scaling is more superior compared to this. But instead, he just calls them all apes. And it's not really working out well, considering that if we try to take it at face value, I don't think you want to take it from Godzilla King of the Monsters face value, considering if you disagree with him, you're going to be called a chimpanzee, a sheep, and other unsavory things. Godzilla King of the Monsters in Kaiju Conversation was interesting because he had this really big vendetta against Shin Godzilla. And so, no matter what, when people would criticize him or argue against him, he'd usually be very defensive, which is whatever, it's a personal opinion. But this one argument that stood out was against him, against like several people. One guy pulled out this really large quote in the middle of the argument, and then he said that this is proof of something, right? That quote is an evidence of what the themes are of the movie or what the natural disaster was. Godzilla King of Monsters says quotes aren't evidence repeatedly. So this comes at a caveat, right? You see, Godzilla King of Monsters is a power scaler. Statements are usually evidence, right? In power scaling, right? Statements of old guys he has used before in debates and stuff, right? So why doesn't it matter then? Well, you see, because it's from a movie he doesn't like and he hates it. And because he hates it, it doesn't matter. So it's irrelevant. And so that's where this whole vendetta of Shin Godzilla doesn't stem from here, but it's one of his many like tirades about Shin Godzilla. So if you're wondering about the strange raving about how they're giving him a 3-pointer is biased, then you got it. So how is it bias exactly? Godzilla King of Monsters have not shown us the scale, for example, and how intelligent or how low it goes. So it could go to a 0, which probably means brain dead, while Shin Godzilla could be like a 3, which probably means like functioning motor functions or whatever, right? But Godzilla King of Monsters doesn't do that. He just says they're biased, and he doesn't even show like the enemy opposition, right? Right? So you're gonna have to be very clear here with this, right? When you're making these types of videos, you can't just like deliberately omit certain parts that will make you look bad, right? And so this is what Godzilla King of Monsters literally is doing. He omitted probably a part of this. I'm not gonna go look for myself. This is all unscripted, pretty much. But you get the point. Godzilla King of Monsters really, really hates Shin Godzilla and is still omitting things from this. So we have yet to see, like, if he's actually going to be truthful. Because for the past like whole video, he has mostly almost been wrong about a lot of stuff. And Godzilla King of Monsters hasn't been wrong about a few stuff on the state of on the not state of power scaling, but on what power scaling is, but it's not literary analysis, which he made that up, and so on and so forth. So we have yet to see when he's going to be truthful, which is going to be a while.
When in their own analysis, he should have 0.
This is a grown man doing Puss in Boots 2 edits. um, about Shin Godzilla fans, or the quote unquote nebulous group of Shin Godzilla fans running away from a real power scaling video. The honest truth, which honest truth I believe is grammatically incorrect. When I used to power scale, I always thought the honest truth was stupid. Like, that would be saying like the truth. So, that's just a personal gripe. But this is just goofy, bro.
They also imply he's more durable than Legendary or Heisei Godzilla, which is fucking brain dead. Now, Dangerville at least can get the temperatures right, which means they at least did a little bit of research. But as for Goji Center, the bigger offender, they straight up lie. They literally just Googled it, and you could tell in both their Shin video and their Attack on Titan video. They mentioned Legendary Goji has a breath temp of 500,000, and that's not true. Not only can you check in GVK's opening, but 500,000 is Heisei's temp. That's Heisei's temperature, and they know that, because that's straight up what you find if you Google it. That means they didn't even Google for their research. So I'd say Goji Center's the bigger offender. Now, the Mechagodzilla video was pretty bad, too. Dangerville was more discussing who did the best against Godzilla / who is the deadliest. That's a completely different discussion from who is the most powerful, though, of which is equally stupid to try to do that without scaling or analysis and just like go off of weapons and shit, which they did. But when me and a Discord bud were talking to them on Twitter, they actually just did not seem to comprehend at all. They did not seem to understand how being marginally weaker than Space Godzilla makes Super Mechagodzilla much stronger. It just did not seem to click. No, I'm not saying they're stupid. I'm just saying they didn't get it.
Usually, before we go on to the actual part of this, where we talk about Dangerville, um, usually the Japanese that people in this group or people they cite is usually Google Translate or translated heavily. Not a lot of people would bother to learn Japanese for power scaling. So, who knows? Maybe the Japanese could be right, could be wrong, but I personally would leave it with a grain of salt here. And I shouldn't be citing the Japanese unless I have an actual Japanese translator that isn't like whatever, but an actual speaker, or at least someone who's good at the language. Now, the other thing is that for this whole video so far, he's been implying that all these guys are dumb, idiot apes. Like they're all doing ape brained ways of doing this. And so Dangerville is one of these guys who doesn't really pay attention to power scale, and so is Goji Center. And so in this one, he basically calls him a stupid idiot or whatnot. It's like this whole thing. He's been calling him like an ape for the whole video. And so for some reason, Godzilla King of Monsters proceeds to call Dangerville not dumb, but ignorant. So it's astonishing here how he manages to switch up his stance despite calling him lower than human earlier, which doesn't really line up. So I guess Dangerville has his respect now. I don't know. Like it's not really this is not really working out here. I feel like mixing these things into all these things is not really working out. Is he an ape or is he just ignorant? Who knows? You decide, viewers.
So any dumb shit they say in their ranking videos or strength videos, I would assume comes off from ignorance and nothing ill-intended. Goji Center, though, are straight up liars, and they know they are. I left a fairly detailed comment on the problems of their Legendary versus Shin fight. Once more, they talked about useless garbage like corporeal bells, which is why they gave Shin and Legendary roughly equal strength, which is stupid, by the way, because Legendary has good feats and Shin really doesn't, other than like supporting his own body mass and going through buildings, but every kaiju can do that. They clearly didn't read this comment, or only read the ones that were praising them, because in the Attack on Titan video they stated once more. And they have continued to lie to people just for the sake of giving gore. Most recently, they lied about the Scorpiopeds in Skull Island ecology. Young Scorpiopeds are carnivore, but adults eat algae. They're herbivores. They're aggressive, but they're herbivores. But instead, they just wanted to show them sting a person so that they can feast on their flesh. They also pretended Ghidorah versus Mechagodzilla is a closed topic. Like, it's not. They're trying to favor Mechagodzilla because it's better at hand-to-hand. It's better designed for melee combat. Like Ghidorah just nags. And if you want me to explain that, I'll do a video on it in time. And they seem to just either hate or just cope when things are stronger than what they should be from a realist perspective, which I think is retarded to have in a kaiju discussion anyway. Like, for example, they mentioned the fact that the Night Feeder can cut through trees is evidence that it could slice through Adult Kong's legs. Adult Kong, who, while not nearly equal to, was still able to take multiple attacks from Godzilla, the motherfucker who could take Astro.
While I will not deny that Goji Center may or may not be manipulating certain facts in their favors, what I will bat for is ultimately their Night Feeder argument. So Godzilla King of Monsters specifically screenshots some parts where where the narrator goes, "Oh well, we have to account for in a real world universe. In a fictional, obviously Kong would be fine, right? That's what they're basically saying. But we need to account into a real world universe that they could cut through trees, and then they can cut through Kong's legs." Right? And he goes, "Oh well, they could take it from Godzilla, so it'll be fine." But they're not arguing strictly in the fantasy perspective of like power scaling and such. They're arguing from the perspective of a realist, right? And you even sort of admitted that in the earlier before you said it was dumb to have. So I don't know what you're arguing against here, but just because Kong in this film's have been able to take it, like specifically Godzilla ramming him or whatever, they're specifically Goji Center is arguing in favor for the Night Feeder be able to cut Kong's legs because if it were more realistic or whatever, this would be the case. So yeah, I don't disagree with Goji Center manipulating facts, but I do disagree with this idea that they said that, oh yeah, the Night Feeder can cut Kong's legs off. And also, I think you need to use better video sources than Kong being like, rammed by Godzilla.
Asteroids, nuclear explosions, shatter buildings by just walking into them. But yeah, man, cutting a tree, totally better. Again, I'm not saying attack these channels. Goji Center are liars, straight up, just to have their like realistic, gory perspective on combat and try to dissuade and discourage power scaling as much as possible, which is very fucking bizarre to me. This impacts the community because then you get apes who just use their logic or get their scaling from YouTube Shorts. YouTube Shorts are a fucking cancer on this website, and anyone who power scales through them is a fucking idiot because it is lazy, no effort, monkey brain content that just has shitty rap songs and flashy images. No discussion, no analysis, just actual trash.
So this is where the video goes off the rails. I mean, it already has since he started ranting about Goji Center. But Goji Center, obviously, he has a valid point here where he complains about Goji Center being wrong, right? And obviously, he's only complaining in the sense that they're not following his power scaling thing. He wouldn't have followed it if Goji Center wasn't particularly, you know, lying about stuff. He wouldn't really complain, right? Because they're whatever channel. But the other thing about this whole thing is that it just stops being about why power scaling matters. Here it starts being about I hate these guys. And so this whole segment is bonkers because now he's complaining about YouTube Shorts power scaling. Like, if you don't power scale this specific way, you're not a real power scaler or something. And if you power scale there, you're a cancer and everything that's wrong with the world. Like, this is the reputation that power scalers get, buddy. You're a part of this, right? You represent a lot of the community. If you are going to be like this hostile to other people, then of course people are going to see you like that. That's why you've been banned from so many communities, right? And it really doesn't help either way. Like people really don't like you. A lot of people don't for obvious, very reasonable reasons. But this specific whole thing is just insane. Like you're just running off on a tangent to complain about YouTube Shorts power scalers not doing it the way I want them to do it. It's very silly and dumb and silly.
But this has a huge effect on the community. It trickles down to the small people, down to the commenters who hate power scaling because of stupidities. But since we established that power scaling is a media analysis and one that involves much more thought and effort than garbage, I don't know why power scaling is shit on so hard when the same fucking people will then spend dissertations explaining why Shin Godzilla is a good movie when it is not.
The Shin Godzilla stuff is irrelevant to this conversation. It has nothing to do with anything this guy's been saying, but this as the video increases, it has less to do with what this guy's saying. But we'll continue. So moving on from that. So the main problem with what this guy is going through is this whole idea like, why is scaling getting shat on so much? Why do people not like power scaling? And the problem with this whole thought process is that when he goes in the comment sections and writes gigantic essays on why power scaling means something and you're just a brain dead ape like he always does in comment sections, usually he gets made fun of for it and gets called an edge lord, and he goes away. It's like this whole thing or something. But the point here is that, like, the reason why power scaling gets mocked and humiliated and people don't care for it is because it's stupid, right? People don't have time or an interest like that to gauge how strong a character is with exceeding amount of time, right? They don't believe it's a good hobby. And so this is what Godzilla King of Monsters has been trying to do this entire video, where he attempts to legitimize this idea of power scaling being a media analysis, a form of media engagement that goes deeper than just a hobby. In reality, it's still just a hobby, as we keep saying throughout this video, but I feel like we just need to repeat it. It's a hobby, and it's not like any literal real academic criticism. You can go and try to go out and look for any citation that cites a power scaling thing as a source, but you probably won't find any because they don't exist. And so that's the big thing with this video, right? um, where he's desperately trying to wade through this idea about why do people hate power scaling? And the truth of the matter is that not just the obvious part where people don't care, but the other half is that the people that make up the community are grown men who probably need to go get a job or something, and then like little kids, and it's neither of these are good combinations, right? Power scaling has a notorious reputation for being made up of people who don't actually read the work, don't actually watch or the work or like engage in it. Instead, they're just here to power scale a really strong character. It's consistent a lot of time in power scaling groups, and normally you kind of just walk away. A lot of time, power scalers are very much annoying. People don't have an interest in it. There's a reason why scaling problems, as far as we go, no, go so like go to this point where people don't care and hate it. um Versus Wiki, as a big example of this, is the major main proponent of power scaling. They're the reason why it's created. Dimensional tiering, as far as my knowledge goes, at least from my memory, was created through some guy seeing an anime or whatever, and going, we need to add this to make characters stronger or whatever, but I could be wrong. But the thing is that dimensional tiering didn't come from anywhere. Power scaling didn't come from nowhere, right? And so these things had to be specific, right? These things had to come from a specific source. So now that power scaling is so big, people don't like Versus Battles Wiki or Comic Vine or all these other websites for different weird reasons. And power scalers are notoriously annoying, very annoying. We do not care, right? We do not care that you know how to scale this fictional character. We don't care that you don't know this form of philosophy, but you're still managing to use it anyways to twist it into your own like weird little ideologies and stuff like that. We don't care, bro. And it's just embarrassing, right? How this stuff works. Godzilla King of Monsters chooses to ignore the fact that power scaling has a lot of bad things. And instead, he doesn't argue for why power scaling is needed in communities, but instead, he argues for actually everyone's dumb, idiot. But if you power scale like in the way I do, then you're smart and awesome and you should be respected. And that's the problem, right? There are a lot of good power scaling videos out there that actually teach you how to power scale, teach you what to do, and talk about how to debate, how to do this, and how to do that, right? These are important videos that people should watch. But if you want to like power scale, but Godzilla King of Monsters decides that in order for this video to come across, he has to be aggressive, he has to be mean about it. And we're ending up to the point where it's just like this has nothing to do with power scaling. This is just you complaining about people you don't like. So yeah, it literally isn't anymore. At this point, we've gotten to the point where it's out of power scaling. And now he's complaining about people writing essays in his comment section about why Shin Godzilla is good or something.
or why the MonsterVerse is an atrocity to the Godzilla franchise when it is not. They'll spend the same effort doing the same toxic arguing over actual shit like, no man, I like it. I don't like it. Rather than something objective presented by the story. And
So none of this has anything to do with why power scaling matters, right? This instead is him trying to like lamenting over why people attack power scaling more than any other group of people on the internet or something on those lines. Like we're the most hurt people ever compared to all these other media guys who review medias or something. Why? Why is this happening to me? You know, but this stuff has none of this has anything to really do with the thesis at hand. Like they're like, oh, the scalers, the anti-scalers, and the purists, they're all fighting to death. Yeah, but you know they're apes. But me and the power scalers, we're on top, baby. Whoever agrees with me and as a scalar, we're high. We're above them all, above all the apes on the planet, above all those filthy monkeys. You know, I'm really not sure what I'm supposed to take away from this, but it really doesn't seem like it's a part of the actual video. I'm just saying.
speaking of those commenters and buffoons, if any of them have a challenge to this, feel free to take me on. None of you can disprove my point or reason to back it up.
Every single time anyone gets into a debate with this guy, he starts calling people like mean names. So I really don't think anyone really cares to debate for him. Again, this is why he's still banned from a lot of Godzilla communities. I will keep repeating this until the end of days.
Anyway, that should cover for this one. See you in the next one.
So this video veers off topic a lot. Not mine, but Godzilla King of Monsters whole video. He goes from YouTube shorts to the power scalers are, not power scaling right to something else, something, something, something. And it just doesn't really end up well for the video, right? And so the video isn't bad. I don't think it really is. I think it's one of his more or less objectionable videos, considering that I can't really object to him on his power scaling work because I don't power scale anymore. I don't bother. But, you know, this video was very much in my radar that I could eventually get to. And so the video isn't particularly the worst. Obviously, he gets a lot of stuff wrong, such as literary analysis and media analysis, which he thinks media analysis is based on, analyzing characters, which he thinks media is called media, which is actually called works. So don't call it media, bro. But media analysis has nothing to do with fictional characters like that, you know? And so Godzilla King of Monsters ultimately runs into a roadblock during this video where he's wondering why people hate on power scaling so hard. Obviously the answer is very simple here, but I mean like he doesn't really need to know the answer if he doesn't want it, but like the answer's there. I don't think the video is going to could be like really improved on actually. I think it is too much. I think it is too abrasive to even be out here, and I do also think it's too disjointed to be, in there, right? I just don't really know if this video could like be salvaged like that, because I think this video can't be salvaged. It's a work, it's a product of its time, and not like in the sense that like, oh yeah, uh, it's like old. I mean, in the sense that it is Godzilla King of Monsters style. He will be aggressive. He will just veer off in the random points in the middle of his videos for a little bit and go back into it. And it's not noticeable either, right? Like he somehow manages to tie into the Shin Godzilla point, into the Reiwa era point for some reason. And then he says, well, they're actually fighting. So if you power scaled, you won't be like these guys. And it's just silly a little. It's a very corny video because he calls everybody around him that disagrees with him losers and slurs and other things. He starts talking like an anime bad guy. It's corny. It's very corny. And I wish he would like toned down on a lot of his corny nature and actually like tried to be very clear. Because when he was talking about Goji Center, that was probably the most non-objectionable stuff that you could ever come to, right? And the Reiwa era stuff, that was very much like non anime villainy, right? That was very, very solid, I think. But then everything else was like very, very much a misinterpretation of everything. Like the media analysis thing and literary analysis and the narrative techniques that he managed to clump together in this video all at once. Like, how do you do that? And it wasn't the worst, but I don't think it could really ever be salvaged like that. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to go support God's Kingdom Monsters, the link of his channel is in the description. But as of now, I that's pretty much it. um and so I hope you enjoyed this video. Again, give that man some love, and that's all. Thank you for watching and have a good night.